The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not reflect the views or endorsement of any entity. Nothing being said on this podcast should be considered as investment advice. Derech is affiliated with Collab Plus Currency and may hold positions in assets discussed in this episode. Always conduct your own research and consult with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. Had to check my watch to make sure it was Friday.
That's kind of that week. It really is.
It's one of those weeks. I am joined here. Welcome to 100 Proof, first of all. It is so great to have you here. That we're doing this live. We have a in-studio live streaming setup. In theory, you're all watching this in real time, so we could really screw things up. We'll see what happens. I'm joined here with Justin Mazzell.
Hi, I'm not Derech. I'm Justin. I apologize.
Derech.
This is more 50 proof this week.
Derech is in Marfa right now. So he's out there doing a bunch of great art stuff in Marfa. Really trying to help traditional collectors get onboarded into, because there's a big art conference out there, get onboarded into NFTs.
Now, is that at Glitch?
At Glitch is gallery
awesome.
out there.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome. Also, of course, we have Sam Remote, NFT Statistics. Sam, welcome to the show.
What's up, everybody? Nice to see you.
Did you already record your show for today or no? Or this is part of your show?
I did, yeah. It was like one of my shortest shows ever. It was like 8 minutes.
Yeah,
so I'm like, Pepe's pumping. I don't know what else to tell you.
This is now a Pepe show for the moment. I will say this, in these times where it's like things are a little crazy, Sam, you have been like a voice of like consistency and like, I'm trying to get the download of what's going on. Like, I feel an emotional connection to you and your wisdom at this point, and I'm just kind of embracing it, where it's like every time you talk, I'm just like, oh, Sam.
Well, here's the crazy thing is, because
I appreciate that.
Because Sam is not here in LA with us.
Yeah.
And I talk to him, like, let's just call it once a week or whatever for one thing. And then he's just busy doing his own thing. I see him, I'm in my Uber watching him. So I actually know Sam better as a podcaster than I do as a human, which is really sad.
Yeah, it's one thing I've learned is when you're doing these shows every day, get up, drink my coffee, I'm like, let's go, this is happening. And like, it's kind of a different personality. My wife is kind of like, what are you doing? Who are you? It's just like, I don't know.
What's funny is it's so true. When back in the day when I used to do, I was working at Tech TV. My producer came up to me after the show and it was like, "You have to have more energy. You have to have more energy." And I'm like, I thought I'm bringing a lot of energy. And they go, "No, this is like, this guy used to work for like big network television back in the day. He was the producer for the Johnny Carson show way back in the day." So anyway, he goes, you have to be, when you do 20 to 30% more energy, it actually just comes off as normal. So
interesting.
So when you hear these like talk show hosts and like radio show hosts, they're like, we're wild. Welcome to Friday, blah, blah. It's like, it actually just seems normal to people, which is weird. So Sam, all I'm saying is you seem very normal when you do it.
Absolutely.
So it's very natural
sounds good.
for you. Awesome.
Sounds good.
Sam was ready to move the conversation. Thanks, I appreciate it. Let's go.
Yeah, my energy's dead.
I appreciate the nice words. You hear the haters a lot, so it's nice to hear some nice words.
Oh, dude, nothing but love over on this side of the house. All right, so we should get into it. We've got a great packed show for you all today. And we're going to kick things off. Sam, you're going to take the lead here and talk a little bit about a little blend action that has been top of mind for everyone over the last few days.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this market this week, there's like the occasional story, like, Sotheby's launched a marketplace, and Pepin, I think, did some interesting things with how they're going to go from kind of the open edition art to like more unique art. Like, I think there's some interesting stuff happening, but really this market has been about two things this week, and it's Blend and Pepe, and I think Pepe, of course, one, because a lot of NFT investors are long. Two, because it's sending the gas fees through the roof. I just tweeted that, the average gas paid per trade on Blur over the past hour was 0.06 ETH. That's the highest pretty much they've ever been. The normal number for that is under 0.01 ETH. So it's kind of making NFTs unbuyable. But then, I think the at least NFT specific, it was really Blend was the story this week. They came out on Monday. We knew an announcement was coming. I think a lot of people thought there'd be trait bidding, and I did know a couple of people who were like, I think it's going to be lending. And that really kind of relates to Paradigm having done this with Uniswap and wanting to kind of really bring DeFi principles to NFTs. And I think that Blur is really the vehicle for that. So, it's had I think I can talk about Blend a little bit if that's what you want. I mean, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go from here?
The good news is that your show has been so great at covering like how Blend works and what's been going on there. But we didn't really know from the launch of this. It's like, okay, this is crazy. What's going to happen? So I would love like the TLDR, like what has happened, because initially Azuki was like pop, boom, right up, like we saw this momentum and it was like, oh shit, this is interesting. 0% interest loans, like people coming in. I even went in and got an Azuki on loan because I was like, I gotta learn what's going on here. Like what's the fallout?
Me too.
What's going on?
So I think there are a couple of things here. One of the interesting things is like when it first came out, there was like a 5-hour period before it came out where there was no trading. And during that period, everyone's trying to like understand the math, and they had someone from Paradigm work with them on this new Oracle free, kind of product. And all that stuff is very interesting. I think the mechanics make a lot of sense. I think they have more in common with like BendDAO than NFTFi a little bit. A lot of the principles aren't that new. The idea of fluctuating rates and, kind of market decided rates, which BendDAO has, and also infinite time period. Also, BendDAO has, you only get triggered based on price, but there's no duration. So but what was really proved, none of that actually ended up mattering that much, a little bit. But like what really proved to matter was the fact that, again, Blur is just incentivizing like crazy for people to give insanely good terms on loans. So that's one of the big pieces that matters. And two is that buying on leverage has never been easier. Right. So it used to, you'd have to go to Paraspace, which is, it's quite easy to do it there, but it's a new site. It's not one we're used to. It's another risk connecting our wallet to an unknown that we're doing it based on trust of people on Twitter, which doesn't always go well. But here you can just go on Blur and push one button and get leverage. So I think like those two things, insane incentives for terms combined with incredibly easy access for borrowers just led to a ton of leverage buying. It got to a point where almost every buy on Azuki, more than 85% of the people were taking, 14 ETH of loan against 14 ETH loans against a 15.5 ETH purchase, like literally just putting 1.5 ETH down. All sorts of buys were happening. Like 80% of the trades on Blur were people grabbing from the offers that were out there as opposed to sellers hitting bids, and the price rallied from 14 and a half, call it, to 17 ETH, which is one of the highest places that we've been. Now, I think one of the reasons this stuff becomes problematic is because these prices get high and they're purely driven by speculators. Like none of these guys are long-term holders who are going to like kind of be around and keep this. They're just trying to make money. Just like when I bought it, I literally bought it when I went to bed and sold it when I woke up. I just wanted to learn about it.
I'm so the opposite of that. Like I bought mine because I was like, I actually want to hold an Azuki. Yeah. And so that was.
But you're at risk of getting liquidated now.
No, I know, and that's the price you pay to play with new technology. So it's like I wanted to. It was twofold. It was one I need to know how this stuff operates, and two, don't get me wrong. I think Azuki is actually pretty cool art.
It's great really art, like amazing art.
And that's actually a good point. Like my initial thought here was that real buyers were just going to get more access to capital. So I was kind of pretty optimistic at the beginning. Like this could be interesting. Like you're going to get real buyers. They're picking NFTs and not just getting dumped to floor NFT. And we're going to see like real buys happen and people who want capital are going to get it. I think what ended up happening is it became extremely speculative because if the price goes down enough, you're going to get liquidated. So and you had a lot of real holders come in and sell. So more than 200 Azukis that had not traded in over a month have been sold over the past 4 months,
really?
which is pretty high for the project. I think a lot of these holders are just like 17 ETH. Like I was at 14 and a half ETH.
That's brutal though, right? Because as a project you want, I'm assuming, and Sam, you're way more in the weeds here than I am, but like you want these members, you want these diverse holders, not just it to be in the hands of people that are just constantly flipping through it. And so what you're saying here is that you had some unique holders that were taking some wins here and then putting them back into the hands of the flippers. Is that right?
And a lot of those holders, they're always sellers for any project. 200 out of 10,000 Azukis isn't that much, but at the margin, it is a lot. And if and we had the same thing with incentivized bidding. Is all these bids just got the price higher than people were used to, and real holders who were patient were like, okay, I've been patient for this price, let's sell. And then what ends up happening is those leveraged, the guys who get them are the guys who are levered long, but prices go lower, they get liquidated. And it's the exact same thing that happened with bidding, incentivized bidding, is it's the airdrop farmers that get the bulk of the supply. It's because the airdrop farmers are the lenders. No one's ever going to lend you 14 ETH at 0% interest. Like, that's just not going to happen unless you're getting an incentive, which is what Blur wants. They want to incentivize people to give great terms and make this attractive. But at the end of the day, those are the guys who get all the supply. And you couldn't, as a project, you just can't have a worse holder, because their incentive is to get their ETH back so they can lend it out, earn more points. So the dumping just happens very quickly. And I think other holders see that and are like, oh, this is not the time to buy right now. There are hundreds of Azukis going into the hands of the airdrop farmers. It just makes it, Azuki has a lot of great things going for it, but this just becomes a bigger headwind than I think what I expected, which was, this is gonna be great. Capital in the hands of people who want to buy Azukis. And just weirdly behind the scenes, you get a dynamic that ends up being much more problematic than helpful, I think, when you look at how these have played out. And the same thing's true with punks. I mean, punks now are below the price that they were before Blend happened, after a 10% rally.
And it's tough for me because it's like, all the mechanics are things that I don't truly understand at the very core. I was even we're whiteboarding, Kevin's explaining some of these things to me, but I do feel like there's a version of this at the beginning of the week that was obviously there's very extremist takes on it where it's this is the end of everything. This is really dangerous. And you have other people that's hey, this can open this up. And so I know there's a lot of perspectives, but it's so we're a week in now. When did this launch? On Monday? And so what would you say, based on the speculation of what could have happened to where we are today, are there any new insights for what's happened so far with where we're at currently? Whether it's the doomsayers or whether it's the people that were optimistic, where do you find yourself right now?
I find myself neither. I certainly don't find myself optimistic. I used to, I think we'll probably see DGods and some new projects come on. And having seen now that Azuki and punks, are both kind of towards where they were before they launched, I don't think you're going to get these rallies that you got. I think it would have been really cool to see Blend without the incentives. It'd been really interesting to see where interest rates come out. How much do people have to pay to get leverage against Azukis? That would have been really interesting to see. But what you've had right now is just the further shitcoinization of NFTs. And I think as that happens more, all these people just dumping into bids, nice ones being dumped into bids. And as that happens more, it just, I think broadly speaking, people start to respond. They're I don't really feel as much connection as I used to. That's just a slow grade. Is that doom for NFTs? No. But, and the other interesting thing is users leave. A lot of the idea here is that you attract, you put in these incentives, it attracts more capital. I think that was how it worked in DeFi. You've almost had the opposite impact in NFTs where, Blur users last week were lower than they were the second week after launch. Before they even introduced their coin, Blur had more users than they have right now. So you have, it's down 75% from where users were in February, because it's just kind of had this opposite effect where you've had a lot of whales take over. People are playing more for Blur points and they're playing to own the NFTs that they want. It just feels like a total trader game. And if you're not in that game, this isn't for you. It's not like you have this huge healthy market on the other side that's offsetting it. It's become the only game, and people are leaving.
That was my question I was going to have for you, Sam, is this is to me, when I think about just if we were to consider these commodities for a second and say, okay, forget the art, all that stuff, they're digital objects, right? Digital objects are always going to be forced towards extreme efficiency, right? That makes sense to me. All of that makes sense. This happening, whether it was Blur or someone else, I feel like it was just gonna happen. Now, that said, I think all of it kind of goes away if we would have, 50,000, 75,000, 100,000 people on the other side of it. They're collectors that are saying, hey, I want to own a CryptoPunk. I want to come in here. Do you agree with that, Sam? Is it just if we really had a healthy community of collectors, would this Blur thing just be a fun little side? Would it be as big a deal as it is today if there was a bigger base of users buying NFTs? It's
hard. I think it takes over. there are 10,000 CryptoPunks, but on any month, only 700 or 800 of them trade.
Right.
In the bull market, 1,500 of them trade. So when you have this massive gamification happening on one side, where they're all just playing against each other, I just don't think it's like the asset class where this works that well. I worked on a trading floor at Apple, I worked at a trading floor at Goldman Sachs, right? And for 8 years, and traders on the floor are like buying and selling, but that's because there are institutions out there buying huge portions of Apple. You have people who are hedging. You have people who are playing against the S&P 500 and all sorts of different players. You have governments who are like, I need to buy S&P 500 in order to get my exposure. I need to buy billions of dollars, and then traders can kind of sit in the middle of those guys and play. But in this world here, it's the only game. 80 to 90% of the trades are just these guys trading with each other. Mm-hmm. And I think it has this impact of like removing kind of the people who are in it for real. Because if you like right now, if you want to buy an Azuki, well, or if you want to buy a punk, there are like 80 to 100 that are just being dumped between airdrop farmers over the course of a week. Like, it's just not a good environment. Like, maybe if you really love a punk, you can buy one. But I think broadly speaking, there's this sentiment like, I probably can get one cheaper when the dust settles here. Because I know these holders don't have long-term interest. I think that what we're seeing here is this asset class is just a weird fit for what they're trying to achieve here.
But I think what you're saying, you just nailed it here. And that's a big question that we're all asking is, like you said, when the dust settles, like when is that going to happen?
I think you need to get to a place where there's just not so much incentive to bid on stuff you don't want. I think that's a big piece of it. So that's just my kind of view. Is
this a world where, well, the one thing that Justin and I were talking about before we went live is like, the Blur token, like it seems like granted I haven't checked in the last couple of days, but it seems to have held its like price more or less pretty well. If Blur takes a hit, like if we have a lot of faucets right now, it feels like there's a lot of ways to receive Blur. There's not a lot of use cases that I can think of. Sam, correct me if I'm wrong here, but like, is it the Blur token that is at the kind of linchpin for all of this?
I think without Blur, by the way, Blur and Pepe right now have identical market caps, 1.7 billion. And that's as of like a minute ago. But I think, I think if the coin loses value, if they start to, I think what's happening right now is you're seeing so much coin go to so many different incentivized people that I think there's more of a feeling like this stuff's actually not worth that much. Like, I've personally done a lot of airdrop farming. It takes a lot of work to get points. And it's not just work. You put on a lot of risk. And like, people are now saying that each point is worth like $3. And people are literally putting like $10,000 of risk up to get one. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I just think we do need to get past a place where there's so much incentive for people to buy stuff that they want to insta dump. Because whenever your most incentivized buyer is someone who's just bidding for something they're going to insta dump, like, it just becomes very hard, I think, for an outside person to want to go buy their one doodle.
Sam, I was talking to yesterday. I had a phone call with some very smart folks on the crypto side at a firm that all they do is they have economists and other people that work for them to help figure out smart contract design and different mechanics. And we were talking about where is this all going in terms of both royalty protection and just like how does a new collection opt out and say, I don't want to take part in this game. I just want to have my own unified like single collection. And one of the things that was brought up was, might there be a world where more marketplaces spring up that are purpose built and protect NFT assets and are only tradable on those single marketplaces? So it's not like we can have them, and there are certain ways that you can do this apparently at the smart contract level. That's above my pay grade, but they were walking me through it. And do you see a world where, especially with art, I'd have to imagine it would go this way. But do you see a world where people say, "Hey, you know what? I don't want my NFTs to be high frequency traded. I want to have. I'm going to protect them more in future collections."
You see a bit of it happening, like Captains, Cubs. A couple of the more successful projects have enforced royalties, and I think that's just like with Cat. If this whole strategy falls apart with enforced royalties, because you have to be able to get in and out very quickly. And it's just really not worth it to pay royalties. So I think projects like we've seen Other D do it. We saw Quirkies do it. We saw Goblins do it, like do these different things where they exchange their NFT for something else. So I think you could see a little bit of it. And then the other side of it, and I think that, you have people who disagree with me. I have a lot of people who disagree with me on this stuff, and I DM with them a lot, and it's always a fun conversation. If you're one of those people who disagrees with me and thinks I'm crazy, just hit me up on DMs. I always like to chat with people with different perspectives here. But it's just that NFTs like it's in this part of the cycle right now where FOMO is just low. It's like, how do you bring back that energy that people get excited about NFTs again? Because if you get away from the incentivized bidding, that doesn't mean people are going to love your project suddenly. Like, people have bruises now, they have wounds, things have gone down a lot. So it's like, how do you bring that feeling of exclusivity that people, I remember back, when people were trading apes, you'd see someone get like a new spinner hat, new 3D glasses. They go on to, I've always wanted a 3D glasses, so happy this is my new ape. Right now, all you have to do is put in a bid and you'll get 6 of them, in a short time. It's just that dynamic has left. So I think that's that second point here is like, how do you get people excited, feeling connection with NFTs again, excited about projects, community? Like, that's the other thing that has to happen.
That's a great point. That's why we get up out of bed in the morning, is figure this shit out. Definitely a lot of scar tissue out there, and certainly, fun problems to work on. But let's move on outside of Blur. Thanks for those insights, Sam. I know that you pay close attention to this stuff, and I also love that it's very important, and something that you pointed out, that you are always the first to raise your hand and say, if you don't agree with me, like, let's chat about it. Like this, because no one has the perfect crystal ball here into the future of how the stuff's all going to play out. So, but I
was in a Discord. and the people didn't know I was in there. And there's this one guy just going off. He's like, NFT stats, like, that guy's so biased. He's like, so mad that proof paths are going down. So he just attacks Blur nonstop, total scapegoat for his own misfortune. And I was like, that's a pretty aggressive take. But so I actually pinged the guy over Twitter. He's like, "Oh, you're in there." Like, but now he's someone I chat with, and we agree on 30% of the things and enjoy kind of each other's takes on the other 70%. And I think sometimes in these public forums, though, it gets way too tribalistic.
Those are those are the best relationships I've found in NFTs, is the ones where you can have people push back on you and say, like, "Hey, what you did there, I didn't like because of this." And then if you have the if you're not a person that's so set in your ways, like I have I think it was an Andreessen or a Ben Horowitz quote where it's like, you want to have strong convictions loosely held, right? Where like you get really, really, you believe in something, but if there's a better idea in the room, a better opinion in the room, you have enough fluidity that you can take that on and modify your thinking, which I always want to be that way. And I know that, Sam, you're like that as well. So you're definitely not like that.
No, I actually think you should hold on to only your thoughts and opinions, even if you're uninformed, and just ride that down. Just take it on down. No, not at all. And I totally agree that that's something that the humans behind a lot of this, it is always really interesting to actually have an earnest conversation with somebody. And I think the best people I enjoy, it's not people that get it wrong. We all get it wrong. It's the people that, with the introduction of new information, can take a look at something and say, oh, yeah, okay, I was a little off on this, and I was right about this. This does make sense, and this might not. But with this new information, I can kind of carry that forward, and I can be respectful of kind of where you're at. And I'd love to see more of that.
Love that. I love your shirt. You got that dark Hawaiian kind of shirt vibes.
Yeah, it's like a Hawaiian punk is kind of what I'd say.
Good.
Yeah,
That's
thank
good.
you. Yeah, it's because of the night mode moonbirds.
Moonbirds, yeah. I got the Japanese kind of event thing going on. All right, let's keep going. Next story. We want to talk about Proof Presents. We're going to do a little... before we get there, we're going to talk about one-of-one artwork. And we're talking about your collection as well.
Oh, that's very kind.
Because, so there are only a handful of artists that, have been PFP creators, All Seeing Seneca, like a few others that have created, like, for those that don't know, she created apes, that have gone on to say, okay, and obviously they have more talent than just being a PFP creator.
Sure.
A Gremplin I'd put in that camp. Like,
absolutely.
there's a ton of people that have created PFPs that can go on to then become, one-of-one artists or do other projects. You were part of our Diamond Drop exhibition. Would just love to hear like a little bit about that whole journey, a little bit more about it. And then, do you think more artists can make this jump as well?
Yeah. This is a topic I'm very passionate about. Yeah, I mean, it is very different. It's like if you ever talk to somebody about the difference between design and art, you'll get a lot of different answers right here. But ultimately, like, if you think about design is like a purpose. It has an intended impact that you're looking to solve for, or an intended flow that you want to guide somebody through. And so it's like there are typically like right and wrong ways to design something. If something is a poor user experience, for example, like that's probably not a great design. If you want somebody to be able to do and achieve something and they can't do that by the end goal, or they're too confused, you probably need to go back. On the other side, art is something that's like, it can just be experienced. You don't need to know all the ins and outs and the whole story behind something. And I know I'm like a broken record right now, but I've been very big on the Summer Wagner piece from Diamond Exhibition, and just going through her body of work. And it's like, I don't know the stories of like what she's doing in these pictures in this world she's building, but man, I do know what I feel about it. I do know what the mood feels like, and it's very moving in that way.
Yeah. You showed me her work yesterday. It was funny because like it's so hard for me. Of course, when Diamond Exhibition comes out, I look through every single artist and see what's going on, but I don't often have the time to go and check out their complete body of work.
Yeah.
And you're like, Kevin, you need to pay attention. Like, go check out this work, and it's like hauntingly good. And I'm a big fan of like art that gives me that vibe, that like haunting, like curiosity. And so she's definitely one to follow. And you collected one of her pieces from
I finished all hers. She had 4 pieces in there. So yesterday I finished all 4 of them. But like it's just such a great thing. But again, like to me, like art that I really love is art that moves me. And that can be in film, that can be in, in visuals. And so like PFPs are interesting because when you're working on these projects, it's very much a design system. You're thinking about how do these things, interlock together. You're optimizing for diversity of whether it's traits or composition. And so it is very much that like that precision of design that comes into impact there. When we made Moonbirds, it was like we had a very stated goal. It was like simple trait pool, iconic elements. It needs to feel different enough, but it needs to feel like it's part of the same family. Like, we've all seen PFPs that like have an enormous trait pool, but potentially like it doesn't feel as connected. So like we wanted a really simple throughput right there. And the other side of it too was like, you want to optimize, at least for me, like my intent and purpose is most of these PFPs are going to be seen, 64 by 64 pixels, for example. They're going to be small in the context of like, you're on a web page, you're on a piece of social media, and this is the person's identity. So it's like, you're more thinking about those design system levels rather than you are like, I want somebody to experience this. And yeah, we have things that we like. You and I were like, we like games, we like Zelda, we like retro things. We also like the simplicity of, the CryptoPunks world. And so you can have those stated impacts that you're looking for. But to me, a successful collection in that sense is one that works. It works as a piece of identity. It works for other people to see themselves in it and be like, yes, this is me. I'm a part of that. That's why traits are such a cool thing. But art, when you're just making just art for the sake of art, I'm not looking at that and saying like, I want to make this for Kevin to feel like he's part of that. I'm making art to be like, no. I'm doing something for me. And it's a little more selfish for me, but it's like, that's what was awesome at End Transmissions. It was such a cool time for me to have a story that was really important to me and to be able to do something about where I am right now and be able to kind of live in that moment. And it's for me, for everybody to collect if they want, but it's my story in that way.
So we can pull up a couple you have some pieces up here. Let me grab the mouse here. So can you just like walk us through like what exactly, give us the vibes, give us the creation process just out of curiosity and what went into this?
Yeah, so the idea behind In Transmissions for me, it started off with seeing this film. It's a film that I only recommend if you really want to watch something bizarre. And I say that because you've taken things when I talk about films and assume that I'm telling you to watch those movies.
Oh my God.
And then you watch those movies and you're like, I fucking hated that movie. And I'm like, dude, wasn't telling you to watch it.
What was that when you told me to watch? It was horrible.
It wasn't horrible. It was a great movie. I'm not going to say it because now you said it's horrible. No, now you said it's horrible. And that filmmaker does not deserve to be known for Kevin Rose saying his film is terrible.
It was a great film.
But here's the point though. Like when I was creating End Transmissions, I'd seen this film and it was called Skinamarink. And the entire idea behind Skinamarink is that it's an experimental film. And so there's not a traditional narrative. You don't even see the kids' like faces in this movie. And this is the only actors in this movie. It's 2 kids. And basically the entire story is they wake up. There's no real subtext for this story. And the doors and the windows of the house are disappearing. And the entire thing is filmed on old like 90s camcorder style. You don't actually see the camera move. It's always just placed in a weird place. And it's placed in angles that a kid would see. So it's like, kind of like low shots that like things are out of focus. And it's a horror film in that like...
You love horror films.
I do. I love horror. But it's like the entire idea is this unsettling feeling of being a kid and what it feels like to like wake up in the middle of the night and be terrified. And if you go into that film knowing that it's not a traditional narrative, it's just it's made to make you feel something again. For those of us who need to feel things, it's actually a really powerful experience. And so with In Transmissions, number one, there's a television that's on in this movie, and it's playing old like cartoons from, like the 1950s, where black and white kind of Max Fleischer kind of area style. And like, there's something out of context that can go from comforting to creepy. And so I started thinking about this idea of like being a kid, falling asleep on the couch and wanting to be in front of the TV because it was safe and it was dark and everybody else had fallen asleep. And I want to fall asleep and it's kind of creepy, but the TV keeps you safe. And a long time ago, it doesn't happen anymore, programming would end, especially for like public access channels. Yeah. And at the end of that, like this sound would play. What would be like the please stand by or end of broadcast for the day. And so for me, what I really loved about in this series Exploring, didn't love in the moment, was sometimes it'd wake you up because they play like the national anthem or they'd like play a beeping sound. And I remember waking up when that would happen, being stranded on the couch and there's no more programming left and thinking to myself like, do I run to my bedroom really quick? Do I try and close my eyes and fall asleep right here and hope that nothing gets me? But it's like there's just this feeling of like, I don't know, it's creepy and it's weird, but it was an object that brought such comfort when the glow of the TV was on and suddenly you don't have it anymore. And for this series, I took this and I wanted to explore it with this mid-century modern visual language. Geometric patterns have been around for a super long time, but in like the mid-century mod visual language, which really took root in like, the 1950s, you're talking about the space race. You're talking about this time where it's like you see these images, and to me, and I'm not saying it is, but you could argue that it was like the last time people were like dreaming in such a big way, where it's like retrofuturism was at the height. It's like people are making cars like, oh, we're going to be in flying cars soon enough, and they're going to have these big domes, and we're going to be in space, and the moon is only the beginning. And it just felt like this time of dreams. And so I was thinking about taking this idea of the dreaming state of where we were at the height of the space race, at the height of, believing the future is now, pairing it with this old CRT screen where it's the last broadcast that ever comes out as the world is ending, and putting these pieces together and creating this, I would argue, my only horror piece of artwork. Just this unsettling glow that if you were in a black room, completely blacked out, no lights on, and this is the last thing that's on a television on this old CRT screen that's barely eking out this last visual before the world ends, like that was it, the memory of a dream.
What do these shapes represent? Like, what are the different, like the different designs? Why is this the screen that is showing at your last moment?
Because I think it's like the memory of, again, like it was a time where we believed that some of these things were possible. And it's like, if this is the end, and like, to put it in a nice way, like right now in NFTs, in art, in the future of honestly everywhere, it does feel like we don't have the answers for where everything's going. There's a lot of unsureness about what everything looks like. And so to me, it was like channeling this idea and holding on with your last gasps of like something that was comforting and beautiful. And it felt like the vestige of a time that wasn't afraid to dream about some of these things. Like that to me felt like the last thing that would be playing is remembering some of those kinds of things. And so again, I took some liberties and created some additional abstractions within that, mid-century geometric visual language system. But that was really kind of the idea and the intent behind a lot of it.
Yeah, and if you go back to your Dribbble account and look at the stuff that you've done historically,
I've always loved geometry.
Yeah, this has been a big, like this years ago. You have pieces that you designed that were like this, so it's cool to see it in NFT form now, and like this definitely belongs on an old CRT.
That's the only way. Yeah, you can't put this on a Danvas or something fancy. The only way you can get it, you got to get a little tiny TV and just kind of keep it on. Keep it in the basement. Send your kids down there where they haven't been good and they need to focus on something and get retrained. It's hopefully slightly unsettling, a little creepy, and that was kind of the vibe.
That's awesome. I love it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, you put a.
I like it even more hearing your story.
Oh, thank you.
Just like hearing the story now, I think with something, I mean, I've always liked this as an output, but I think the story just makes it all come together. For sure.
There's a playlist that I listened to while I was making this. It's my like astral plane primer playlist. and it's all just like dissonant, discordant sounds. And it really helped me get in the mindset. I'm what you call a method designer, in that like I gotta hear something that like fits the bill of what I'm designing.
And what's the deal with the different colors? Because I notice most of them are kind of that grayscale, and then you have a few that are color.
Yeah, that one's the Hell Drinker palette. Color for me is like so I wanted to do black and white because like I wanted to really restrain myself. However, like I liked the idea of, if this was a much smaller collection, I probably would have kept it in the black and white and kind of played with how it could, maybe expand from here. But because of the size that, we ended up kind of landing at for Diamond Exhibition, I was like, I do want some diversity in there. And color is it's my favorite part of design. I love color. I love playing with color. When I was initially scoping out these shapes, I created color palettes to test, and I created like 48 unique color palettes that I could play with. And so really wanted to pare it down, create a collecting sort of mentality of like how these things, you don't just only want the black and white at a collection this size. And so for me, it was just a matter of exploring, getting to do cool colors, and then seeing, because the process of how these colors need to get bloom lighting effects, and I need to there's a liquid, like there's a ton of different effects that are applied to each of the outputs. Once we get them out from the SVG form, it's then figuring out how can I utilize colors and not overblow it, make sure that there's still definition and all that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of trial and error with the color palettes to figure it out, but I love color.
Very cool. Correct me if I'm wrong, but these do come with unlimited utility and a free token.
Yeah, the utility is you can look at this in the bunker during the apocalypse.
So there is no. But in all seriousness, did you ever think about any kind of burn mechanics around this stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of cool stuff I can do. I mean, the funny thing is so each of these is a 2x2 grid composition, different tiles on there. But I just love the idea that it's like that's just a bunch of metadata that I can play with however I want. There's a lot that I can do with it, which I really love. And again, because this is a visual language system and a style I've explored my entire career, I love the idea that this is sort of like a precursory block into where I can kind of take some of these things, and ultimately how I lean into it, what I want to do with some of that stuff. I think it's super fun. But as an artist, it's like, that's what I like about this right now, is like, this is something for me that I created, and now I get to kind of build around it. If I want, I can do what I want with it. But ultimately what I really hope is that like, if, I find the people that identify with it and really enjoy sort of what that output looks like. And then if I want to add something on, I'll explore that for myself.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you for sharing that story. It's always great to have the background here, and it's beautiful stuff. I mean, it's just, of course, it's going to be awesome.
Y'all are very nice. I appreciate being here.
Speaking of other staff members that have done art, before we brought on Team Divergence, they actually had launched their own art projects, and we want to show you Team Divergence. By the way, Arran from Team Divergence, our VP of Engineering, launched a project with Harry as well before they joined the team, and we want to give you a little clip of that as well.
Simple mathematical formula that all it really does is place dots on a page. From that, you get these incredible, beautiful images that come out. They're so densely packed that if you printed it at about 250 dpi, it would be larger than Jamaica. It actually uses open source mapping software, something that you'd usually use to explore the globe, but in this case, using it to explore the image itself. I became obsessed with it. I kept exploring what happens when you zoom in as far as you possibly can, actually explore down to the minutiae of every single little dot. Proof of artwork was about showing people these patterns, but also allowing them to explore along the way.
All right. That is so awesome to see some of Arran's work. He is just such a great engineering talent. I have a new co-host that is by me now. Not Derech Edwards, a different Derech. Derech, welcome to the show.
My pleasure, Kevin.
It is. You can pull your mic in a little bit closer too if you want. It is so great to have you here because people, especially the proof community, probably know you for the art that you've done recently and dropped within our community, and that people have just absolutely fallen in love with. And so you're normally based out of Tokyo, correct? And you're here in LA, and we're like, well, shit, let's have him come on the show and talk about, some of his art and what you've been up to. So I'd love first, though, to kind of give people an idea of, some of your collections and what you've done. Which one of these do you want me to click on here and feature? Should we look at?
We could start with Whispers in the Snow, which was the latest one.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so walk me through. So you're really known for this style of this kind of like 3-up view. These are being recorded simultaneously, right? In that they have the cameras are it's actually happening all at the same time. Is that correct? Or
Yeah.
So they're synced completely.
Yeah. So some of them, it's a little tricky because I like having the 3 points of view to have this omnipresent kind of vibe, where you know what's happening everywhere at the same time. Something that very few people know is actually based in like a visual haiku, which is 3 lines, 17 syllables. So this one translates into 17 seconds.
It's so beautiful.
And it's just like, I wanted to translate the serenity that Japan brings. I mean, you guys were just there, and like it realigns you and it makes you feel so calm and soothing. So it's worked out really, really well. And I actually have to give a shout out to Dro, who's one of the collective members. He was the very first one to collect one of these pieces, like 2 years ago already.
Oh, really? Wow.
And he was the one who said, this is going to go high.
That's crazy. So this is something, how did he even find you?
Honestly, I don't really know, because it was in the middle of the bull run.
Yeah.
So it was really cool because, like everybody was just like all over the place and they were just digging to see what was new and stuff. I had the pleasure of having really big names collecting me when I started. I mean, like the bull run was just insane. And it was like between Pixel Pete, Dro, Unknown Collector, et cetera. And I think that from there, it started to like take off.
Yeah, and you have a really fascinating story when it comes to, your path and your kind of story to get to where you are today as this artist that is now, as you're dropping things, they're like selling out pretty fast, which is amazing. But walk me through, if you're willing to share, what COVID was like for you and what you went through, because I know that was a pretty crazy time for you.
So for me, what happened was I was traveling around Asia and I was doing documentary photography. And I started traveling when COVID was nothing. It was just like some random thing happening in China. So I was like, sure, I can travel. Like nothing's going to happen. And lo and behold, like little by little, it started to take off. And every time I heard that it was coming closer to the country I was at, I would just fly to the next one and to the next one and so on. So that way I ended up going through Japan, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. And at the point where it got really bad, I was in India. And the government was like, okay, guys, like, we don't know what the fuck we're going to do this. We need you to get out. We need you to go back home. The only option you have is taking a flight literally to your home country. We're not allowing any other place. So I was really lucky that a friend of mine was the one who decided to book the flight for me, because I couldn't, because my bank had not canceled, but blocked my account because it was weird that I was going through so many countries. So it was like the shittiest moment where your bank can fail you. So my friend booked it for me. I gave him one of my lenses in exchange because I obviously didn't have the cash for that. And the flight was India, Japan, United States, Mexico. And while I was in Japan, I was only supposed to stay there for 2 hours. And I was eating a sandwich, having coffee, just waiting in the Tokyo airport. And suddenly I remember like seeing all the screens. Everything turned red. All the flights got canceled. And all the people were going crazy because it was like, no one can go home. All the flights got canceled. There were no inbound or outbound flights. And it was just wild. Like nobody knew what was going to happen in the end. So I was really lucky that Mexicans.
Where did you go? Like, what did you? Like,
I have friends there. I'm really lucky that I have some very old friends over there. So I told them like, okay, this is happening. I need a place to stay because I don't know what's going to go. So they ended up letting me stay there for 2 weeks, which was what the government told us that was going to last for. And after the 2 weeks, suddenly the government was like, guess what? This is bad. And we're going to block for, first it was 3 months. Then they extended it to 6 and then to 9.
And so they, as a foreigner, did they say it was okay for you to stay there? Or
they didn't have any other option. I actually have like immigration actually laughed at my passport because I'm one of the very few people who has 3 extensions in Japan. Like they never do that. Like tops, it's like 1 or 2. I have 3. So after those 2 weeks, I started looking for a place to stay at because I obviously like more than 2 weeks at a friend's house was way too much. And there was a hostel that was still open. So I reached out and I was like, yo, like, I don't have a place to stay at. I need somewhere. I need a roof. And they were super nice and they let me stay there. But I was only a guest. It was a 9th-floor hostel. There was nobody else. And they told me like, okay, so this is not going to be like a regular place. Like, we know that your situation is rough. We know that there's nowhere for you to go.
Was this a Japanese owner?
Yeah. Super nice guys. Amazing people. They became my family. They told me, check your bank balance. Tell us how much you can afford. If it's $1 it'll be. And we just want you to be safe. Obviously, the hostel is not going to have like the normal commodities of having someone to come and clean your room or like stuff like that. But at least you have a roof and you're at a safe space. So that was that. And suddenly I started to just show people what the life was inside of Tokyo, being trapped. I started sharing it on Instagram. And because also, unfortunately, because of COVID, I lost my job. So it was really rough for me because I had no income. And I started sharing like, oh yeah, like this is the daily things I do. I'm studying Japanese, or I'll walk around, or I'll go like, so where I used to stay at, there was a river and there were like bridges. So I would go and work out on the, I don't know how you call it, like the metal
Like the pull-up bars? Yeah,
I would just be doing that. And Japanese people would just like stare like, what's this weird creature doing, you know? Because it was like too raw for them. Like people don't do that. So I'd have like people literally taking pictures of me, or I'd make friends like that.
Yeah.
And like I had people literally coming the next day and like dropping off like groceries or stuff because they knew that I was just trapped.
Oh, that's
super
amazing.
kind people. And like even one night I was just wandering around. It was like probably 4 a.m., 3 a.m. And I was just walking because there was nothing else to do. And I found this like group of teenagers doing BMX and skateboarding and stuff. And we started chatting. I was taking some pictures and stuff. They were like, dude, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, it's super late. And I started telling them my story and everything. And while I was talking, by that time, I was only eating once a day because I had to ration a lot of my stuff. And I told them like, oh yeah, they asked me if I had dinner. And I was like, like I had lunch. That was it. And this guy starts just to text somebody else as we're talking. And maybe like 7 minutes later, another guy with a BMX arrives with like bags and bags of 7-Eleven. They literally just went and bought food to have like a dinner with me, even though they didn't know who I was. They didn't want anything from me. Just like, they just wanted to take care of me. And it was just beautiful. Like people were super gentle with me. Everywhere I went, everyone supported me. When I started sharing stuff on Instagram, people asked me my address through Amazon. They would ship me stuff. The people from the hostel, like their family would make like handmade face masks. They would send me some. It was a beautiful moment because it was like you're at the mercy of everybody and you don't know how things are going to turn up. And suddenly when you let go of everything, life starts bringing things to you. Sorry, I'm choking because it was like a really important moment in my life. And after those maybe like 2 months of doing that, I started going into Tinder because I got lonely, and it was really rough because I have no family there. My friends, they were taking care of themselves or their families, so people were not going out, and I was like, I need to meet someone, like not a partner or anything, but how do I meet somebody? And I was like, okay, let's try. So I got into Tinder, and suddenly this other girl who was a photographer, she had in her profile like photos that she shot, like no profile pictures of her or anything. And she was saying like, oh, I'm looking for another photographer to just like hang out and have a model or just like whatever, like nothing serious, no relationships, no nothing. It's just like becoming friends. I was like, oh shit, like this is nice. So I swiped right and we matched. And we went out, we started shooting temples and stuff. And we had a super nice night. I kind of wanted her to have a dinner with me, but obviously I couldn't afford it. So we went to 7-Eleven and we bought like sandwiches and sodas and stuff. And
There's some good sandwiches at that 7-Eleven, by the way.
I know.
Their egg salad sandwiches to die for.
I don't know, like, actually, there's so many articles about Japanese convenience stores.
Yeah.
That it's like, the quality of the food that you get there
Yes.
is equivalent like to a top restaurant in other
People
countries.
may think that we're joking when we say that, because when you think 7-Eleven, you think of like, like the lowest end, whatever convenience, but we're being serious. Like it is really good food. So anyway, yeah.
It actually makes total sense, because if you think about the pace of life of Japanese people, it's very hard for them to stop at a restaurant and have a proper meal. So for them, it's like, oh, I'll go to 7-Eleven and buy something. Mm-hmm. So the moment that 7-Eleven or convenience stores in general realized how big of opportunity this was for them, they bumped the quality, and obviously people started ditching restaurants and just buying convenience food.
Yeah, I was in Tokyo probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and I was out there at this kind of friend's birthday party, and this friend was friends with the crazy Michelin star chef, David Chang.
Yeah.
And David's like, oh, we got to go to 7-Eleven. And I'm like, here's this like top tier chef, top of his game. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you don't understand the egg salad sandwich. And we went and we hit it. And I was like, oh my God. Like, so yeah.
And how much do you miss it now?
Oh, I went and had one when I was there. I went and had one last time I was there just a few weeks ago. So yeah, absolutely. But anyway, so at what point, thank you for sharing that story. First of all, it's like, wow, like, holy shit. Like that's what it doesn't, it's both, beautiful and not surprising in some ways, in that when you get to understand the Japanese culture, I feel like there is a lot of, this like communal care that happens, like this, like you walk around and everything is so clean. Yeah. And it's like this idea of like supporting the overall kind of like, ecosystem, which is a really powerful thing, I think.
And it also syncs a lot with Web3, I think, like, which is something that you mentioned when you went there, like that makes a lot of sense. People are used to looking at the greater good. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to flip something fast. They understand that the longer they hold and the longer they support, the better for everybody. So I feel like there are so many parallels that we can learn from them. Mm-hmm. And that was part of the reason why I got into crypto. Because when I was there, like I was a tourist, so I couldn't work. So a friend of mine was like, have you ever tried NFTs? And what I was doing back then was, because the only thing I could do was go out and shoot, I would, like, literally the staff of the hostel would lend me their bicycle, and I would just like mount my camera on the tripod and go around the city and shoot, because it was Tokyo in middle of a lockdown. Like nobody could see that. So
it's such a beautiful, that's like such a rare moment, right?
It was, I even like get like chicken skin. Like I remember it, and it was like, imagine standing in the middle of Shibuya, the crossing in middle of the street.
The chaos of all chaos.
Exactly. Like in middle of where there's thousands of people, or if not millions, crossing every single day. All the billboards were shut down.
Wow.
All the lights out. There was not a single soul there. And it felt apocalyptic. It was just like,
I was going to say like a haunting kind of like apocalyptic. Yeah, that's,
And especially because if you're there live, like it's so vibrant and there's so much energy, and being at the complete opposite, it's something that I hope only happens once in a lifetime, because it was very special, but it does make you value people. Like it's crazy because sometimes we want peace, we want serenity and stuff, but once we lose like that energy, you're like, holy shit, I need this to come back. Like I want to see the city being alive.
It's interesting you say that because, you know, during COVID, I was actually in Portland, Oregon in the middle of the woods, you know, and I, of course, had my partner and, kids. But one of the things that we realized, and part of the reason when we started the company, we came down to LA, is just how much happier we are when we have more close bonds. Like these are essential to have these friendships, you know, and like, when you're in the middle of nowhere, you know, it's first few weeks awesome, couple months sure, no problem, you know, but over time it has, you know, a depressing effect on the psyche and the body, and like it'll take a toll for sure.
It does. And going back to what I was talking about, like that's why I started going into Tinder, because you start going crazy. Like at some point it was just like, I need somebody. I need people. Like I can't keep on being like this.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting married.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
So that's how I ended up meeting my wife.
I love that. I'd love to also I mean, we could just keep going for hours.
Yeah.
We got to schedule a longer podcast to go into this in more depth. But I would love to cover a little bit more of your collection to bring it back to NFTs a bit. For those, when you first started minting, when you're out there and you first started doing, you know, your initial Genesis drop, your first pieces, was that on Foundation? Was that on Super Rare? Where were you doing that when you had first learned about NFTs? Where was
I
your
started on
earliest
Foundation.
Works? On Foundation. So
Yeah,
if I click on this
down
is
there.
going to be your earliest work, basically.
And if we go to collections,
okay.
up and then down, all the way down, a little up.
A little up. All
There's
right.
one called Dreaming Tokyo.
Okay. This is your first
Yeah.
piece that you dropped.
That is my very first
collection. Okay.
So if you notice, a lot of that is like very intimate Japanese stuff. Like you'll barely see any foreign people. It's very open scenes because again, like there was nobody. So I had chance to see Tokyo in a completely different moment in life. And this, I love talking about movies and thinking about me as a camera that's just like going through life. Because for me, Japan is this very surreal place where things, even if I live there, even if I've been seeing it every day, it always feels new because it's something that I just can't relate. It's something that it feels like a movie. It's just so surreal and so new to me that I walk around and I'm like, I just can't believe it.
Yeah.
So, and then it comes down to something as simple as like this guy smoking or the top guy cooking, people talking, cheering. It's beautiful to think about slowing down in life and just breathing in and seeing things pass by. I was talking with Sarah and she was telling me how
from our team.
Yeah. How she loved being in Kyoto and suddenly she was trapped like under a rain and she was just like standing there still and seeing life pass. And that was her favorite moment. And that's exactly what I try to do with this. Like just appreciate stuff. Something as simple as this girl just like standing there and she's just waiting for the light to change, the raindrops falling on the water and distorting the neon signs, the train passing. And I don't know, like if we think about it, like even when we're with our families, with our friends, it's those small moments that we appreciate.
Yeah.
And that's why I started doing these pieces. Like, and that's why I found also the power of haikus. Haikus are this very short sort of poem that encloses all this emotion in very, very few words. So that's when I was like, how can I translate this into, as Justin said, like a visual language that does translate the feeling?
Oh, interesting. So these are haikus, essentially.
It's like a visual
because
haiku.
It's three.
It's three. It lasts, some of them a little bit less, a little bit more, but normally 17 seconds. And a haiku is
3 lines.
3 lines, 17 syllables.
Interesting. This is all making sense. This is beautiful. So I have a handful of haiku books at my house.
Oh, shit.
I don't think I've ever told you this, but I've like studied some of the masters, you know, and like I always wanted to go back to who is it? Baisu. I always get his name confused, but he was buried in Kyoto, and I haven't yet to go to his gravesite. I heard it's quite beautiful, and I want to go check it out. But like, there's something so powerful about a haiku, and the simplicity, but like the depth it can bring to you when it hits, you know. And like when you look at what you're doing here, it's just that. It's like that moment where we only experience it ever so often, where we can just pause and really just absorb everything in that particular moment. And if you can do that every once in a while, it is just like, it's the best feeling ever, because you're truly present.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point. Like, I tend to ask people, like, what was the last time that you were under the rain and you felt the rain touching you? Like, not being worried of getting wet. It's just like that emotion of feeling, of being human, of feeling stuff. Like, imagine,
oh my God.
Imagine if someone like literally held you from the shoulders and was like, stop thinking, stop doing, and just appreciate what you're seeing.
So it's so funny. You're gonna laugh when you hear this. My wife used to think I was crazy because when it would rain in Portland, especially if it was like a rain during like a spring rain when it was warmer outside, I would literally just go sit outside and just sit in the rain. And just like, I would actually be fully clothed and I didn't care. And I would just like lay and just like let it rain on me, because there's just like something about that like repetitive, like just presence that is just like reminding you like you're here. Like it's very powerful.
It brings you back to yourself.
Yeah, right, totally. And you get out of your head, you get out of everything else, and you're just like right here. And it's I think it's part of my interest in all things meditation. Anyway, we're going way off on 100 proof here. We're way off topic. But I love your work. It's absolutely stunning. And like, you know, some of these early pieces, you know, they're not crazy in the world of collectibles in terms of people wanting to still, you know, pick these up. Although it looks like most of these are sold out.
Yeah, all of it is actually sold out. All of them are secondary.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, in terms of like picking them up off the secondary, like you have one here under 1 ETH, and then, you know, ETH, and then it quickly jumps up from there. But this is for some of your earliest works. And then, you know, everything you do these days.
We have the other ones on super rare up on the top where you have the link tree.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Those again are all sold out. I'm very blessed to have an amazing collector base. And more, I call them my family, because they know everything I'm doing. They know where I'm going. They're probably hearing me now. And I feel like that's the power of art in NFTs. Like, in the traditional world, it would be really tough to be in touch with your collectors or even know them.
Yeah.
Like, you might buy one of my pieces in a gallery and I'll never even know who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here it's just like the collectors see what I'm doing. The collectors know my journey. We speak every day. Like Dro, the one that I was telling you who picked up one of my very first pieces, we literally speak every single day. And we're just like family. And again, like maybe 2-3 months ago, my camera broke. And I was like in a bit of a hassle because I wanted to make more pieces, but I couldn't. And my collectors reached out and they were like, yo, drop some pieces that you have and I'll just literally sponsor the camera. So 4 collectors got together and they gave enough money for me to buy it. For this trip, I've been staying with collectors. Like I've been crashing at their place. I've also dropped in Solana, for example. Some of the people from the team, shout out to A2K again. He was super nice and he reached out and you were like, yo, you need a place to stay. We live in Houston. We have a spare room. You can stay here for as long as you want. Because I was staying here for this moment to meet you. So I've just like been crashing from place to place. Another collector, Grace, she literally paid for part of my hotel in New York. Another friend also, Nick Cabana, he also paid for my stay in New York. So it's just like people have this community feeling where they know that if I succeed, we all succeed. And that's a huge takeaway that I feel like we kind of get lost because of the speed of Twitter and crypto. It's just we forget about the human side.
Yeah.
And that's super important. Like,
yeah. This is why, when we have this, we kind of did this new announced refocus on art at Proof. It's this storytelling is like, this is, yes, we love the fun gamification of some of the dynamics and the burning and the craziness and all that, but like to hear the emotion and hear the stories behind the artist, so it's not just a JPEG, the depth comes out, is so very important. Yeah. And it's just because it's like, I don't know, like you hear these stories and you pick up one of these pieces and it's not just a collectible to go up, it's a story that I want to hold. And when my friends come over, I'll tell them the story that I just heard here, right? And like that is power and it's beauty, right? And so I don't know. I'm a big fan of yours. Love your work, and your journey. I have a feeling is just getting started. It's so nice to hear that things turned around, and like this is it. What could have been seen as a very depressing, and I'm sure it was a very trying moment of your life. Like clearly, it was very emotional for you to go through this whole thing. Had a silver lining in the end, right? Like it seems like things have been going quite well recently.
I think it's part of what we were talking about before. Like when you lose everything, and literally by everything I mean like I had nothing, you appreciate so much everything. Right?
Yeah.
So knowing like from one collector to two collectors to 10 to 20 to, it always feels like a very first time.
Yeah.
And then, for example, you guys appeared. You saw my work and you were like, yo, make a drop over here. Let's propel you. Because that's something that I wish a lot of people understood, that artists, we're just one person and we're making things work and we're busting our ass to make everything happen. Like me, for example, I've been around here for a month and a half just to be in this interview, to meet my collectors, to meet you. And we're doing things. So that's why I was so bullish when you said like, oh, we're doing this twist into art, because it's human. It's not anymore about companies or making quick flips or anything. It's about real stories, real people.
The humanity behind all of it. Yeah, this is exactly right. Yeah.
And something that you feel proud of owning, which I feel is super important here, like to have conviction and supporting the journey of someone that is real.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll do another one of these, more extended version. Great to have you on this 100 Proof. But let's tell people, everyone that's watching, where can they find you? What's the best place just to like to follow your adventure? Is it Instagram? Is it Twitter? Twitter. Okay.
Twitter, 1,000%.
Okay. So what's your Twitter handle that people can go to?
There we go.
All right. There it is right there. So it's Twitter/DERECH.
Derech. Yep.
Oh, sorry, there's an I in front of there. This is why I should be wearing my glasses. The one day I don't bring my glasses, and this happens. Awesome. So I'm gonna tweet out a piece of your art today, to say thanks for coming on the show.
Actually,
and I'll tag you as well.
If you can click on the banner, you'll see something really nice.
What?
That's from the drop we did with Moonbirds, and it's all the Moonbirds saying how much they like the work.
Oh my God.
And how happy they were that Proof was doing this.
That's so awesome. And thank you to all the Moonbirds in the community at Proof for rallying behind you for some of this stuff. Like, they're great people. They really are. We're very lucky to have such a supportive community.
It's insane. Like, having people who are willing to support and go through this journey with me, it's been amazing. It's been life-changing, and I want to thank you for everything you've done.
Oh, man, we're just getting started. We're going to do a lot of fun stuff together. So very excited to have you back on soon. All right. Well, with that, I think it's time to wrap things up. This has been 100 Proof. What a fun show. It was an honor to have you on today's show, and look forward to hanging more in the future.
And it was an honor being here, and thank you to everyone who heard my story, and we'll see where this goes.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Take care.